we go. All right. Let's get started here. All right. We did kind of stop in the middle of a topic, almost the middle of a sentence, in fact. Yeah. Are you feeling guilty about that?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Just checking.
It's like Jewish guilt.
Well, I think
All
that's
right.
the whole theme of the conversation.
That wasn't just the theme of the conversation. That was the conversation. All right. So, what page are we on? You know, if you have to ask that. All right. So,
Aren't we on Shema? Yes. There we go.
very good, Doc. Very good.
I thought
I'll be honest, I've been thinking about
Rabbi
every few
Slater's
days I
even talked
get
about Shema.
before I say Shema, I'm like, okay, I'm fixing the world.
There you go. There you go. That's good. Excellent. Good.
And Rabbi Slater's talked about the Shema yesterday.
Wow.
I mean,
That's good. It's a real thing.
maybe he's starting to come to class. We just don't know.
That Rabbi Slater's also talked about Shema, apparently. He must have been listening. All right, so let us start from... No, we're not up to Vav yet.
No, we're not.
We stopped in the middle of Hey. I'm just trying to find a good starting spot to start back from. We'll start from Vihine.
What's
Chaim.
the name?
Which Vihine? L'chaim.
Bottom of 284.
Vihine b'chol yom v'yayim? Is that 284?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes? All right, there it is. Bano 284. V'hine b'chol yom v'yayim. All right, so what we said before this was that the base level of the world, at least since the sin of Adam and Chava, and perhaps this has changed over the years, but certainly today, the base level of the world is pretty low. The standard, the way things are, the room for holiness is just not the way that feels good. It's not good. And nevertheless, we have opportunities to bring good shefa into the world. And he's been discussing that the primary way to bring this global shefa of introducing more goodness into the world is through Shema. Okay, so that's kind of the basic concept we've been dealing with. So he says as follows: V'hine b'chol yom v'yom, every day, tzarich she'yischadesh hashpa v'ha'ara b'nivraim. Every single day there needs to be a renewal of this shefa and the light that needs to come down to the creatures of the world. Shet'ala oisam min ha'madrega ha'shvala ha'shirashis b'hem, to raise them up from their low base level that they are at. V'yitim b'hem kiddush, to give them sanctity, ubehirus, and a shine, as we've learned. So what he's saying here is that this base level needs to be revisited daily. In order for it to change, it needs to be revisited daily. If you don't revisit it daily, it's going to revert back to the baseline. And that baseline is not good. So in order to keep that from happening, we need to get back to this rejuvenating the world with shefa. We have to do that on a daily basis. V'ulam, however, Sidra ha'chachma ha'aliyayna, Hashem's divine wisdom arranged, Mitzius ha'ara hazais, the reality of this light, Hamas chazekes u'ma'averes ha'chayshach shel ha'olam, that is able to be strengthened and remove the darkness from the world, u'magbares bai u'beberuim ha'yakar, and it will strengthen the both in the world and in the creatures of the world, the glory, the hamaila, and the high levels, the heights, the kedusha, and the sanctity, shezacharnu, as we've mentioned. V'talsa hamshecha b'maisem hatachten, and Hashem made this shefa dependent on the actions of those of us down here. So it's not like the shefa is randomly going up and down, or based on Hashem's decision to go up and down. What's happening is that Hashem has tethered this shefa to what we do, to the way we act, to the things that we think, that we say, that we do, or that we don't think, or we don't say, or don't do. All of that is connected to this shefa directly. So it's not like Hashem decides, okay, today we're going to bring more shefa to the world. That's not how it goes. This, at least not in this regard. This specific global shefa that we're describing, this is tied directly to our actions. V'gam b'zeh. V'amnam, however, ha'maisa asher tla abai hu misar adam es nafshay al kiddush ma'yizbarach. The highest form of this influence that we can have for this shefa to come to the world is the willingness or the action, the activity of a person giving up of their lives for the sanctification of Hashem's name. So that's the highest form of bringing this specific shefa to the world. Now, don't be confused with what we mentioned a month or two ago about how Torah is able to access the highest levels of shefa. This is not describing that. This is describing a different type of shefa. This shefa is a shefa that is global, that brings goodness to the world. It's a different type of shefa than the one of Torah. The Torah shefa seems to be higher. I don't exactly know what that means. And this shefa is perhaps more global, more far-reaching. I don't know exactly what the differences are, but there are two different types of shefa. And this one in particular is connected to our giving of our lives for Hashem. And the gambas ayesh madregas. Now within that, there are different levels. Because if a person is going to actually give up their lives for Kiddush Hashem, that will bring down a tremendously bright and great and powerful shefa to the world. And it will create a significant correction in our world. And that will add a tremendous amount of sanctity and shine to the world. That's the highest level. Someone who actually gives up their life for Kiddush Hashem. And a person who does this in their mind, meaning that they commit to being ready to do this, to being willing to do this, and in their minds, if the opportunity comes, they're taking it. Then, dahainu begemar belibai lehimaser kamash zacharna, meaning that he commits in his heart to give up his life should the opportunity come, as we mentioned. Yamshich gam ken hashpa mimin hashpa hazais. There will also be a level of this shefa that will come down into the world. Just it won't be quite as powerful, won't be quite as strong. So, what he's saying here is that, like everything else, there are levels. It's not all or nothing. And a person who actually gives up their lives for Kiddush Hashem, they're going to bring down the highest level of this described shefa. They're going to bring down a level of shefa that will affect the world. It will bring holiness. It will do all sorts of things. The person who is willing to do so, meaning that they reach a mindset that I am ready to give up my life for Hashem's sake. Someone can do that if they can come to that recognition in truth, like for real, not just saying the words, but actually feeling that. They will also access the shefa, just not to the same degree. So, like everything, there are levels. It's not all or nothing. A person can attain a certain level of this by not having the opportunity. Even by simply agreeing in their heads, in their hearts, that this is something that they would do, they're on that level to do, even though they're not actually doing, that itself can also bring down this shefa, just not to the same degree as someone who actually goes through that action. Okay? Clear? Okay.
Know what you die for, so what you live for.
Yes. So it's interesting because on the one hand, we have what he's saying here, that an act of giving up your life for the sake of Hashem is certainly, pretty much the highest form of Kiddush Hashem. But at the same time, that in a way is easier than living your life that way. As the Rav Aaron Kotler, Zichron Livracha, said, to die al Kiddush Hashem is one thing, but to live al Kiddush Hashem, that's already a whole other story. It's.
But he is saying that we're going to get the person who gives up their life for it is a higher madriga of hashpag.
Yes. So as far as the shefa is concerned, the person who actually gives up their life is going to accomplish more in the shefa department. I don't know that is.
That one action versus a lifetime of actions.
No, not necessarily. I'm saying that for somebody to live al Kiddush Hashem might be a more difficult thing to do than to die al Kiddush Hashem. Even if it's a one moment. I don't. What would be an example? Let's say Yehuda. In this past week's parsha, we had Yehuda and Tamar, and Tamar was going out to be killed, and Yehuda admitted that it was from him, right? So that one moment of Kiddush Hashem perhaps was more powerful than someone who gave up their lives for Kiddush Hashem. It may have been, but not as far as the shefa goes. It seems that as far as the shefa goes, the shefa is more connected to an action than to a thought or an acceptance. But as far as the levels a person can reach and the reward perhaps a person will get, I would assume that's more related to the difficulty level. And sometimes the difficulty of living El Kiddush Hashem is greater than the giving up your life for El Kiddush Hashem.
Rabbi, can I ask a question?
Yep, in just 1 second. Go ahead.
The soldiers and the victims who are, maybe not the soldiers because they're fighting for Israel and not necessarily they're fighting because they're Jewish and they're fighting because they're giving their lives because they're Jewish. But the people who died in the last year, who died because they're Jewish, but they didn't willingly give up their lives.
Okay, so you're asking if someone is killed because they're a Jew, but they didn't give up their lives because they're a Jew, is that on the same level? So I'm not one to say. I don't know. My assumption is that they're different, and that someone who's killed because they're a Jew is granted a unique space in the world to come that is a place that nobody else can even see. It's so high. It's a place that no one else has access to because it's just on a different level. And that's said of people who are killed because they are Jews. But someone who willingly gives up their lives because they're a Jew, meaning they're told, convert or die type of thing, I would think that that's a higher level. I would think that someone who does that and goes through that willingly and says, I am giving up my life now for the sake of heaven because I don't want to denounce my faith, I would assume that they're on a higher level, but I don't know that.
Is that just a question? It's a good question. Is that a question of Kavanah? Like if I have the IDF or somebody who's in the IDF, they're, one person in IDF is Dati and another person's not. And so this individual goes in and he's like, if I die, this is for, it's not only Eretz Israel, this is for Hashem. Whereas somebody who's fighting for the IDF and is not Dati, and he's just fighting for the land of Israel, but no Kavanah, is there a differentiation?
So you're asking what happens if someone has a different motive? Do they still go into this category? And to me, it would seem that the answer is no, that the motive is all that matters here. I would think that somebody who has a different motive would be included in this. I wouldn't think so. Because the whole level that he's describing here is a level of accepting upon yourself to do this. And the highest level is actually doing it. So doing it without accepting, to me, seems kind of like you're missing the point. But again, I don't know that for sure, but to me it would seem like it's all about the intention.
Rabbi,
Yes, go ahead.
can I ask a somewhat difficult, controversial question?
As long as I reserve the right not to answer.
Yeah, okay. So what if somebody is killed because they're a Jew, but they're not actually Jewish?
Someone's killed because they're a Jew, but they're not actually Jewish.
But they're not actually Jewish. This happened quite a bit on October 7th, and I was recently asked what I think about that, and my response was, go ask a rabbi, I don't want to answer. Now I'm asking her.
I wouldn't say it's a controversial question. I don't have an answer for you that I can say with any level of confidence. But my assumption would be that it would be the same thing, but I don't know that. My assumption would be that it's the same. The question is, if somebody is killed because the killer thinks they're a Jew, but they're actually not. So the question is,
a non-Jew can get.
So of course we know that a non-Jew can get a portion of the world to come, for sure. And if the non-Jew is doing whatever they're doing because of their commitment to Hashem, even though they... Are we talking about where they think they're Jewish?
No. Still a thought.
Yes, you're talking about where they think they're Jewish. Yeah. So I would assume that if you're dealing with someone who thinks they're Jewish, and they're killed, and they're giving up their lives for the sake of Hashem, I would assume that yes, this does apply to them. Now, will they have the same place in the world to come as Jews? No, they won't. I don't. That I'm confident about. But if you have somebody who doesn't think they're Jewish, so then there's no element of Kiddush Hashem in their minds, then I would think not. Because again, I think it's all about the intention. But I don't know that for certain. Okay, Leanne?
I just wanted to know what the rabbis say is the best way to keep this in one's mind on a constant basis, like what visualizations we're supposed to be having. Obviously, this idea of whether the argument of all these things we're bringing up is just to encourage us to have this in our minds constantly. So if that's the case, then what are these visualizations that we should be having? How do we keep it in our mind in a real way, like not?
How do you keep this idea of willingness to give up your life for Kiddush Hashem? How do you keep that in your mind? I would think the best way is to try to live that way. Try to live al Kiddush Hashem. If you try to live al Kiddush Hashem, then dying for Kiddush Hashem would be, the given. It would be the natural next step. So you try to live everything that you do should be al Kiddush Hashem.
But it seems like when you say, I guess what I'm saying is when you say Shema specifically, to have this.
Yes, Shema is certainly the focal point of when this is supposed to be going through our head. That's the point of Shema, is accepting this upon ourselves.
Here.
But as far as the rest of the time, I think it should be the way you live. You should live for Kiddush Hashem. And then that is, I would think, certainly a fulfillment of being willing to die for Kiddush Hashem. I would think.
It's not one of the states of Jews.
It's not one of the stages of Chiris. Correct. It's not something you have to. It's not something you have to remember all the time. Because she wants to know, how do you live that way?
You're saying keeping it on your mind all the time.
It's not. It's not. I'm not saying there's a mitzvah to do that specifically. I'm not saying there's a requirement to do that all the time. But it's probably part of Yichud Habayre. Lahamin sheyesha lekaben achar zulatzai. To believe that Hashem is it and there's nothing else that exists. Which logic should lead you to, yeah, of course I'll give up my life for that. Okay, so I would think it's part of that. I don't think there is a necessity to be thinking about this all day.
Right.
But if she wants to know how to, if you want to, it's certainly a good thing. Yes.
Isn't that then one of the
Just a second.
videos?
Just a second, please. Go ahead. No, you interrupted first.
Okay. Not that I'm well versed in all this, but I know that from the Ari and Rav Shlomo Sharabi, he has a siddur. I'm not saying it's for whatever, but he lays out. You can get it in English where and really it's broken down. When you get ready to say Shema, you should think about Sreifa, giving up your life in these different four or five ways, and then before you go into Shemona Esrei, you make yourself a Merkava and you think about giving up your life, and it's different permutations of the Yud, the K, and the Vav Hey.
All right.
So, but these are it's lined up. And
Where do we get that? What's it called?
That's getting a little much, perhaps.
But he puts it. But it is lined up in there in certain Siddurim that you could see that this is this is the Kavanah you could have, and you could be thinking about all Kiddush.
Okay.
My life,
Okay. So what Stephen's saying is that there are those who are on very, very high levels of focus, and they're able to think about lots and lots and lots of different things in very short amounts of time. In order, though, not like other people, in order, in an organized fashion, and be able to think about the act of actually giving up your life, visualizing that before you say Shema. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I also think, though, that for most people, probably not the best way to go. For most people, the best way to go, I would guess, and everyone's, got to make their own decisions here, but I would think the best way to go for most people is to just think those words in your head. And I say Shema, I'm accepting Hashem's kingship, which means I'm even willing to die for it. I would think that would be, I think that would be more palatable for most people. Now, for people who are on a really focused level and they're able to really, organize their thoughts quickly and go through davening and still think of all these things, they can, picture themselves being thrown into the fire like Avram Avinu and like Hanani, Mishael, and Azariah being thrown into the lions with Daniel. You can do that, and certainly that's a very powerful thing. I personally would probably still be in the middle of yesterday's Shacharis if I was doing that, though.
But this is, I'm just saying, I'm going to agree with Rabbi Goldman, but I really don't know. The Ramchal is probably, he's not going to go into that here, I don't think, but he was at that level.
Oh, of course.
And so he probably is just brushing the surface of
Ramchal is certainly not telling us to do what he does.
Right.
But he's giving us the concept.
Correct.
And everybody's got to do it the way that works best for them. That is for sure. Okay, yes.
I have an odd question.
You have an odd question. Wow.
It's meant to be serious.
It's meant to be serious. Oh, no.
If somebody...
What am I going to do?
I'm just going to make this up, like a drug like Adderall. And they said, because I take Adderall, I have this incredible ability to focus. And now I can do what you said. And then when they don't take it, they say it's so hard to do that. I'm just wondering if you have a comment about that.
I do have a comment about that. Stay off the Adderall. Okay, so what Doc is saying here is that if somebody's using external substances like caffeine or Adderall or the like, all the things in the same category, for focus, and they're able to focus well, and other times they're not able to focus so well because they're sleeping, because that's what they do for a living. And the question is, do I have a comment about that? So my comment would be, you gotta get a hold of your life, and try to work on stability. Stability is a really important element in life. Trying to stay stable. But no, of course, we all go through ups and downs. We all go through times in our lives that we're more and less focused. That certainly happens to everybody. We got to take advantage of the times that we're most focused to the best that we're able to. And then the times that we're least focused, we got to have a certain baseline, a certain minimum that we're going to do anyway, no matter what. And these have become second nature to us. So if I can make it a slightly more practical, perhaps, for other people, some mornings during Shema, you're focused. Some mornings during Shema, you're just not. Is that a reasonable thing, Doc? Yeah? Okay. Without any, external substances being involved. Just people sometimes are more focused. I know that might be hard for you. You're just always razor sharp. So, but for the rest of us, while you're sleeping, obviously. But for the rest of us, sometimes you're more focused, sometimes you're less focused. So I think it's critical that we have certain things drilled into our head that these are absolutes. So even if I'm half asleep, this is what goes through my mind. And this way, I'll have at least that bare minimum, even on the days that I'm a little groggy and I'm not really focused. I'll at least be able to punch this out. I can say, yes, I had in mind that I'm accepting Hashem's rulership. I have in mind that everything that exists is Hashem. I have in mind that I'm willing to give up everything as I do this. So if that's your baseline, then of course you can always go up from there on a day that you're more focused. But certainly don't ever let it get below that. So that would be my politically correct comment for your question.
World, though, I've spoken to many of the young men that go to the yeshivas here. Mm-hmm. They all mentioned that they drink tons of coffee.
You're talking about the boys who go to Minneapolis.
That's not the only yeshiva.
That's the only one that they drink tons of coffee. What? That's the only one that drinks tons of coffee. Because they have this very fancy coffee maker, and they have tons of incentive programs to get you free coffee. And they're very into their coffee there, which is fine. So what's your question?
You don't think they're doing it as a part of how it's helping them to continue their studies?
Is it helping them? I sure hope it's helping them. What? Where did this conversation just go?
Of it. You're talking about the actual psychological focus proponent of it. He's not
Does it
talking
really
about the
matter
incentive
then?
of it.
If we're
He's
not
talking
saying-
about.
I don't understand your question. What's your question?
Isn't it giving
Is
them
it-
more focus?
Are you asking why am I knocking caffeine? Is that what you're asking?
Are you saying?
Yeah, okay, that's what you're asking. Is that what you're asking? You'll go with that. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, this conversation just went the wrong direction. Okay, let me just make my position very clear. For people who need help focusing, they should do things that are healthy to help them focus.
Thank you.
How's that?
May I
Great.
ask
Anybody else?
Another question.
Yes.
To tag on what Leanne asked
Yes.
about visualizing, I mean, for a modern day visualization, I use and I practice this because if the opportunity presented itself, I'm afraid I might freeze. So if I visualize it, it actually helps me become more familiar with, I can act on it. Is, for example, if I see a child that's going to be hit by a vehicle and I can save that child's life by giving my life, then that is, I mean, in my mind, that would be living for God because I believe in a child's potential and is more godly than adults. But I'm not rationalizing all of that when I'm thinking about it. I'm just saying this is something that I practice.
Okay. No, so that's great. So you have a very realistic visualization that works for you, and that's great.
I mean, but is that? I mean, but
Is that a
that's
bad
not-
thing? No.
Not necessarily because I'm doing this because to die because Kiddush Hashem is something different that you're saying, right? But to have a modern visualization of
Kiddush Hashem means that you're doing this for Hashem's sake. That means that what happens is something that is going to make Hashem happy. Not the fact that someone's dying, but the fact that they're willing to do this. So, whatever scenario that plays out into. So yeah, that would work.
We don't know. I mean,
We don't know. And you don't need to visualize a specific scenario, but there's nothing wrong with visualizing a specific scenario.
Like if you start thinking about like envisioning yourself in a case, like October 7th, that could be detrimental, I think.
Yeah, you got to be careful. You don't want to be putting yourself in a dark ages. That's not. We don't want to start hearing nursery rhymes like Mother Goose and Grimm. That certainly didn't do much good for people, right? But I mean, whatever works for you. For every individual, they gotta do it their way. Jody, what would you think of? This is gonna be something good. I can tell already.
I'm not speaking.
You're not speaking. Oh well. Okay. Gula, did you have something to say? You don't even remember anymore. It's been so long.
I did, but when somebody was asking about essentially being makabel or yichud hakel, if it's sheisachiyos, no, it's mitzvahs tmidios more.
Okay. Is accepting Hashem's oneness, is that one of the 6 constant mitzvahs? Yichud Hashem is one of the 6. Right. So is this Yichud Hashem? So I believe that what the Ramchal is saying is that one comes from the other. Is that the idea of Kabbalas Omach Shemayim, which is Hashem Echad, Yichud Hashem, is the willingness to give up your life for it. That's the highest form of that taking place. So yes, I believe they are very much connected. At least the way the Ramchal is building it out here. You have to really go back to the beginning of this whole section, which is where he started the process of talking about Yichud Hashem, Hashem's oneness, and what that means, and all the permutations of it, and then he goes from there into this idea of Mesiras Nefesh, and I think that is because one is a product of the other. In other words, the same way if I believe Hashem is everything...
Like if you think about being Mesiras Nefesh, I wouldn't call that Yichud Hashem.
I know. That's why we're having this conversation. If you did, then we wouldn't have this conversation, right? I think what we're saying here is that Yichud Hashem, the oneness of Hashem, is he started with Hashem's absolute oneness. That he covered way back in the very beginning of the Sefer. Now he's saying, when we accept that upon ourselves, what that means is that we're recognizing to such a high level Hashem's oneness that everything that exists is Hashem, and therefore every single thing and every single person and every event is all Hashem's doing, and therefore I'm accepting it. Because that's a product of...
The bear eating bamboo, Yichud Hashem. Because that all comes from Hashem.
if in your mind,
So I don't want to call that Yichud Hashem.
you wouldn't call that Yichud Hashem. Okay, so you're saying if you take something purely mundane and you associate that with Hashem, you think that's not a fulfillment of Yichud Hashem. I think Ramchal argues with you. I think Ramchal said earlier that every single thing that happens is associated with Hashem. He says that is the point of the creation. The point of existence is for all of the world to recognize that every single thing that goes on in the world is Hashem's doing, and that is what we say when we say Shema. We're accepting that everything is that way, and we want the whole world to come to that recognition that every single iota of the universe is Hashem. That is Yichud Hashem. So if I can look at a panda eating bamboo, and I can say, this is Hashem's doing, then I believe absolutely that's Yichud Hashem. I think that's exactly what Ramchal is doing over here. But listen, read it through again from the beginning of the Sefer till here, and let me know.
That's what the Shara Basina and Kovos Lavavos talks about a lot.
Yes, he does. Yes, if you want to learn duties of the heart, Shara Bechira, and you'll find a lot of that there too. Correct. Well, really, it's more in Shara Yichud, but yeah. Duties of the heart, yeah, it's in the Shara Yichud, the part that we don't really learn. Well, some of us don't really learn. Okay.
No, but the Shara Basina does it really nicely with the physical world.
Yes, Shara Bechina as well. Yes, it does. Okay. All right, anyone ready to move on?
Ready?
All right. Okay, so V'amnam. Nobody? Got one. All right. After a 60-second pause. Lama shetzarech leischadesh. That which needs to be renewed. Ulhimashech b'chol yom, and to be brought down from the spiritual realms down here into this world every single day. Lifi sidrei hahanhaga, based on the way Hashem arranged the world and its runnings. Dai hamasira b'machshava. It is sufficient that we have in mind our willingness to give up our lives. That is enough to keep the world where it needs to be. So remember, the baseline is very low, and giving up one's life brings a lot of shefa. Being willing to give up one's life brings less shefa, but shefa nonetheless. And he says Hashem arranged it that daily shefa that we can bring by accepting this upon ourselves is sufficient to keep the world afloat and to keep it in a decent place where it won't devolve to absolute problem. Yes.
Why do we need such an extreme? Just talk about pandas eating bamboo. What do you need to go into all this Mesiras Nefesh for? What's the point?
Because the highest level of a person accepting Hashem's oneness is giving up their lives for it. It's that sacrifice. The sacrifice is what shows that highest commitment, the highest level of commitment. So in order to bring down this degree of shefa that's way up there, you need the highest level of commitment, which means the highest level of sacrifice to show that commitment. So to show that commitment without... I'm sorry?
You're also bringing down this one. That's what
Every single mitzvah we do, he said, brings down shefa. Every mitzvah is connected to a different element of shefa. But we're talking about a very specific shefa here that's global and that raises the level of the baseline of the whole world. That is related specifically to Mesiras Nefesh, to Yichud Hashem, to accepting Hashem's rulership.
When you before Shema, you say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying that if you think I'm being Mesiras Nefesh, that's different than the fact that Kodesh Baruch Hu was throughout the whole world. That's what you're saying.
No, I'm putting them together because that's exactly what Ramchal is doing over here. Ramchal is saying that Shema means that I'm accepting Hashem's oneness. What does that mean to accept Hashem's oneness? So on a very low level, it means that I believe Hashem is the only power. If you think about that a little deeper, what that means is that Hashem is all that exists. There is nothing else except Hashem. If you take that to another level, that means that therefore I have to submit myself to that because Hashem is everything.
See, I think therefore is an inclusion.
He said that. He said that himself. This wasn't me. This was Ramchal. You got to go back a couple pages. He said that. And he's continuing to say it again right here. So if you follow through that logic and you keep going and you understand it more and deeper, then when you say Shema, you're saying Hashem is one. What that should mean in your head is He's one and nothing else exists and everything is him, and I am 1,000,000% committed to that belief and therefore to it. And my commitment to that means whatever Hashem wants. If that means me being dead, then so be it. Because Hashem is everything.
So again,
It's
not
all together.
my action versus an action happening to me. In other words,
Correct. So if I'm presented with the opportunity to give up my life because of Hashem, so then that means that if I'm on that level and I do that, I have just brought down the highest level of Yichud Hashem into the world. Dying al Kiddush Hashem is the highest form of Kiddush Hashem. At least for this specific Shefa.
Yichud Hashem and Kiddush Hashem
Are very much intertwined. That's exactly what he's talking about.
intertwined, I understand.
No, he's saying that they go, one's an outgrowth of the other. Because if I haven't fully comprehended and committed to the Yichud Hashem, I'm not going to be willing to give up my life. But if I have absolutely fully committed to that, that means, by definition, I'll give up my life for it. They go together. And any lacking in one is going to create a lacking in the other. That's what he's saying. At least the way I'm reading it. You'll have a week to read it through again. Let me know. Okay, so therefore, the Ramchal says that by giving the daily mitzvah of Shema, we're able to keep the world on that level that it needs to be to raise it up from that very low baseline. And this is what happens through the pasuk of Shema that we say. And the product that comes from that, he hamshachat hashpas hakiddush v'habrias v'briya kula. This is the bringing down of the shefa and the holiness and the shine, the clarity into the entire world. Loses laktsas ilui, to raise it up a little bit, min hachol v'hacheshech, from the mundane and from the darkness, shehi ba, which is regularly in it. Kefi madregasa hasharashi is based on its baseline level. So, what he's saying here is that by saying Shema, we are committing to this knowledge of Hashem's oneness, and if we do that to the highest degree, then what we are thinking is, I am so committed to the oneness of Hashem that I will give up myself for it, and that belief, that commitment to doing that itself is enough to raise the world up from its base level, which it is on without that, and that is enough to keep the world going as we know it. Now, that's not the same level as someone who actually gives up their life for Hashem, but it is a level which is close to it, and therefore will bring down enough of this specific shefa to keep the world running smoothly. All right? Okay. All right, we'll see. Is anybody not here next week? Okay. You may
I
not
don't
be.
know,
All right.
Rabbi, the timing is hard because it's Hanukkah. I don't know with lighting exactly what's going to be yet.
Okay. So if you can come, come. And if we need to join you with your candle lighting, we'll join you. That's fine.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. Okay. So next week we're on. The following week we are off. But next week we're on. All right. Have a wonderful week, everybody.
3:30?
What's the-
Yeah.